Hello, babies. I'm sitting here with my son, Appa. He was sleeping on this bed, and I was like, Snatch! It's time to record a podcast, little dude. So he might fall asleep on me. I love this life, being a cat mom. It is so fun working for yourself. I mean, most weeks I work like 10 to 12 hours a day, and then, have to work the weekend. But it's so fun because it's just like 2 p.m. on a Friday, and I'm just like in my sweats, sitting in bed, yapping to you guys. So thanks for being here. And I have a little kitty on my lap. Today, I'm going to be chatting about distractions, possibility of being a lately diagnosed ADHD kid, how to reawaken life, and some of the things I'm struggling with these days. Don't leave! No! I knew that was going to happen. Buddy! It's fine. Speaking of distractions, let's roll the theme song.
Can I be honest for a second? Entrepreneurship can often feel kind of lonely. Especially as a female business owner, it's easy to get pitted against peers rather than welcomed into a collaborative community. My guess is maybe you felt the same. I fully believe that your life and business is equal parts what happens to you and what you make of it. Yes, I am quoting the great Hannah Montana. So when work feels disconnected and life gets overloaded, let's retreat in community to fill our cups and our tool belts with everything we need for the next season. I am thrilled to host the second official India Jade Getaway Retreat. Last year's event sold out and it was so unbelievably fun. You can bet your bottom dollar that this one is bigger, better, and built especially for my female business owners and photographers. This year, you'll have 3 days and 2 nights at the exclusive Cliffs Cantwell Lodge, as well as a luxury wedding-styled shoot at the 75 in Hocking Hills. This is not just for photographers, it's for business owners, creative dreamers, female entrepreneurs, and of course, photographers are more than welcome to attend, especially at those styled shoots. Tickets are currently on sale now, and you can get a special discount if you head to the link in the show notes. Do not miss this one, you guys. You are going to love this getaway, and I cannot wait to see you there. Once again, click the link in the show notes to save your seat.
So I'm not one to self-diagnose, and I don't want to be one of those people that sees a couple TikToks and goes, ooh, I have that. And then you watch more and you're like, ooh, I also have that, because that's not like necessarily legit. However, I do think that there is a beauty in, even the internet being insane sometimes, there's a beauty in shared information, or maybe someone else on the internet sharing something and you go, oh my gosh, like no one in my immediate community or my circle has ever talked about that or recognized that. I relate to that so much. You nailed it. And I probably have whatever you have. So a couple years ago, I think I started mostly when I graduated college, realizing that I got easily distracted by things, and not quite in the sense of, oh, every time I try to do a task, I can't focus on it, or I lack making eye contact or anything like that, but more so in, okay, like normal daily adult functions are really difficult, and sometimes getting motivated to do things is extremely difficult, or dishes pile up faster and more furiously than most people. And some of the very easy things like, okay, I need to do my laundry. I need to now fold my laundry. I need to, not live in a messy situation. I need to not have 35 million tabs open at once. I need to not try to multitask so much. I need to actually get my homework done and not procrastinate. Those things I think happened all throughout my life, but I just kind of got pegged as like, oh, you're just lazy. Like that was kind of the language growing up that was put on me. It's like, you're just lazy. You're not diligent. You're not disciplined, that kind of thing. And so I was like, okay, like, I don't know. When you're told that so many times, you're probably like, yeah, I guess that's true. Even though I didn't really think it was true for myself, I was just like, okay, I guess I'm just one of those kids. Whereas like other siblings of mine would go to bed at 9 p.m., wake up at 5:30 a.m., work out, do things, brush their teeth, put their shoes back away, do their homework as soon as they got home from school. I was like the opposite. I was more like, no, I want to stay up late. I want to doodle on my homework. And in class, my brain would just completely go off. I had a really hard time focusing on what anyone was ever saying in a classroom setting. Like sitting and learning audibly was like the worst thing for me. But I was really good at acting. I was drama kid. I was really good at like pretending like I knew what the answers were. I was really good at like BSing my way through presentations and regurgitating information, like absorbing it the night before a test and spitting it back out on the test. So it looks like I knew what I was talking about, but I didn't understand on like a deep level. So all that to say, like, I think in those days I was like, oh, I'm just creative. I am probably not, your standard student. I'm more of a visual learner, I'm more of a hands-on learner, and I'm just a creative kid. And I didn't, it came across to my brain as like, math isn't for me, science isn't for me, like I'm just an art kid. And I think that's kind of how like my parents and my, teachers probably viewed me as like, oh, that's just like probably her thing. And I got A's and B's, so it wasn't even like, no one was noticing. But in my heart, I'm like, I don't know this information. I do not know what we just learned in history class. But when someone says we're having a test tomorrow and we just have to memorize X, Y, and Z, I can shove that information in my head and spit it back out because I was treating it like a script from drama. I was like, oh, yeah, I can memorize lines, so I can memorize information and like poop it back out on the test. But anyway, so then I was in college and I did CCAD, so I did like an art school, and that's not very academically challenging at all. I had a few standard classes, like we had a philosophy class and we had art history and we had a business math class, and I took anatomy in high school and in college. But especially at college, it was almost easier than high school was, especially like those classes, because I mean, I hate to say it, but it's just like it wasn't a challenging academic environment. You know what I mean? I think our anatomy class in college, we like read Scientific American articles and discussed it. Versus the anatomy class in high school, we went to a cadaver lab. We were memorizing the muscles and the bones in the body. We were having tests about like what different functions of different things do in your human body. And in college, it was like, what do we think about this? I remember this. This was a true story. We read an article and the professor, it was like at a virtual class. She was like, what do we think about this article about why your toothpaste tastes weird after you have had orange juice? Like that was a real article we read in college. I was like, what? And one of my philosophy papers, we had to kind of write why we were different than, I think, a banana. Like, you had to kind of philosophically describe why a human made in the imago Dei, but they omitted that part, was more valuable than a banana. So, anyway, that was kind of the environment of academics. But then when I kind of was a senior and I lived on my own with a friend, we had a shared apartment. It was super fun. That was kind of like, I had lived in dorms for sophomore and junior year. I was an RA, so I like had my own housing, but there wasn't a lot going on. Like I had a meal plan, so I ate mostly at the cafeteria. I didn't cook a ton because I had the meal plan. I had a lot of space, more than most of the people in dorms, because when you're an RA, you get a bigger kind of living situation, which was nice, instead of having to share, a bedroom with someone, which the more I think about it, I think is just so wrong. You should not be paying thousands of dollars to have a dormitory and have to sleep in the same room as 1 to 3 other people. Sleep in the same room. You realize that means like dressing in the same room. That means like everything that you would want to do in privacy and just having peace and quiet as a grown-ass adult, you're not allowed to do. I think that's a little crazy. The more that I've thought about that, I'm like, that's just so wrong. Like, that's not right. Okay, anyway. So then I kind of get through my college experience, and then that last year I lived with a roommate, and she was kind of like more aware of my like not cleanliness. And I'm not like a dirty person, but like I'd leave my dishes in the sink for a couple days. Didn't bother me that much. I would have food in the fridge that would maybe start to go bad after like 4 or 5 days, and I would like take too long to throw it out. She's like, girl, this smells. And I'm like, oh, okay, got it. So I needed someone to kind of call me out on that, because there was like different things going on. And something that I kind of noticed was that I was really good at the work portion of life. Like I could multitask a lot of things. I was running my own business. I had multiple jobs in college. I was really good at like busying my time and staying focused on my tasks. But the actual, like, when it was just me existing without having a task in front of me, it was really hard to just focus on real life stuff. It still is hard to clean up after myself, do the laundry, not spread out, not have, plants die, not, clean the litter box when it needs to be clean. Like those things are hard for me, or even hard to just like put in my brain that need to happen. I'll do everything else. I'll like do my work, serve my friends, like serve my community, jump into anyone else's problem before I'm willing to like do my own stuff. And so obviously now that I'm a grown adult, that's kind of just bled into more of my life. And the more that I've like, I've come out as possibly an ADHD baby. But the more that I've just kind of lived with myself and lived with a husband, like now that I have someone else who's like, hey, I'm noticing these patterns too in you. And so all that to say that more information I've been reading, more of my friends who've gotten diagnosed with ADHD or late diagnosed, more TikToks I've watched, more articles I've read, I'm like, okay, this is definitely probably 99% sure something that I've been dealing with. And it's kind of flown under the radar because I wasn't like the only kid. I had 3 siblings, and some of them had other issues going on. They had some neurological things going on and had a lot of doctors and a lot of therapies and things. So like I seemed to be doing just fine. So like it kind of felt like it was just a glossed over thing. And it didn't seem to super affect me growing up, but I wonder how it would have changed things to know that information back then. But now my husband's father is a retired psychologist, and he, I was kind of spitballing this with him, and he's like, oh yeah. He was like, I've noticed this. I'm like, oh, okay, good. It's good to have your opinion here because I know that I'm not crazy. He's like, yeah, no, you and Ian both probably have ADHD. We're like, okay, great. So all that to say, never had an official diagnosis, but I do think that would be helpful to have that framework to operate under. But for now, I'm just kind of like, okay, what can I do to live with this in a way that's not so debilitating and it's not so tough to get everyday life tasks done? And that's where today comes into play. I have some things that I've kind of tried to incorporate, and I also just have some things that I think help us wake up. And I have experienced these periods of time where I'll be like in a slump or kind of in a fog, I think, about life. And then doing some of these things help me wake up out of it. And so even if you don't think you have ADHD, or you just find yourself being constantly like in a slight depressive state, or constantly like struggling to like reevaluate life and like do what you want to do in life, maybe some of this would be helpful to you. So also, while all of this is on my brain, it's also coinciding with Lent a little bit. Lent just started, and if you're not familiar, that's usually a time when Christians and Catholics will fast for 40 days leading up to Easter. And I think it's kind of interesting timing too with the current state of the world. There's a lot of other social movements going on right now. People are also fasting for 40 days. And so if any of this is interesting to you, maybe it'd be a good soft challenge to say, okay, over the next 40 days, let me try to implement some of these things and see if it helps at all. So one of the first things that I recommend, let me start here with like the things that I think help wake up out of the fog that is sometimes being alive. Reading The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry is one of the best things I have done to kind of give me that like, oof, that espresso to the brain reminder of life is precious, time is passing. How are we going to slow down and operate in the way that we are going to be proud of, especially as people of faith? And even if you're not a faith-based person, even if you're not someone who prescribes to Christian beliefs or other beliefs, this is still a book that I highly recommend for anybody. Again, it's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. And it just kind of takes a lot of these principles. It goes into the history of time even, and distractions, and kind of how social media and society has played a part into all of this, and really makes you reconsider how you're spending your time and living your life. And I think it does a great job of just presenting the information in a structure anyone can understand. And I also just happen to love the way he writes his books. I have all of his books actually. So that's a great one as well to just kind of explore. Next suggestion is to set extreme limits on social media. I have tried and failed this in different times. I fasted social media, I think, for almost the entire month of January, except for just work things. I've gone a whole Lent a couple years back. I did a whole 40 days without social media. And I've done this for different periods of time before. I always find it hard as a business owner to be so strict and be like, I can't do this, because so much of your business and life really is impacted by that. I have lots of other episodes on this topic, but I do think setting extreme limits, as in like screen times, going into the Instagram app and having it give you 15 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day, and then it will like kind of encourage you to pop off. But also I have a brick thing. It's like a piece of technology where you can physically tap your phone to it and it will shut off your access to certain apps, and you can go in and toggle which ones that means. And I think that one's pretty helpful. But then the other thing is just I physically delete social media off of my phone on the weekends to give me like a hard stop. So I'm filming this on a Friday. This weekend I'm going to delete the social media apps, like Instagram's gone, Facebook's gone, everything off. And then I log back in on Monday to do what I need to do, respond to comments, respond to inquiries, post whatever I need to post. But I think doing that and having a hard and fast, like, no, it's not even on my phone right now. It's not hard to log back in. It takes less than 30 seconds. You got the fingerprint technology these days. So I think that's been helpful to not just put it in another folder, not just hide it from my home screen, but physically remove the apps when I don't need them for work on non-work days. It helps a lot. Another thing I suggest is to try to stop multitasking, but do batch work instead. That's been a game changer for me in my work, is instead of saying, oh, I'm going to edit some photos while I listen to, my podcast while it's going through and like check for any errors before I can post it. And I'm going to have like my social media up on the side in case somebody needs me to see something. And while I'm there, I'm actually going to have my emails up in case I need to respond to something. And in the middle of all this, I have like a half done contract I need to send to a client. No. And I'm talking to myself right now, because once in a while I still fall into that, where I start a task, I get distracted by something, and then before you know it, I have 8 tasks halfway done. And then by the end of the day, none of them get done. And I'm really frustrated at myself for not getting any of them done. So what I try to do instead is like literally in my Google Calendar, go in and schedule a chunk of time for batch work. So what I mean is, like, if I have some photos to edit, I will put 3 hours on my schedule and say, I am only editing this album for these 3 hours. Then when that 3 hours is done, I have another chunk of time and go, okay, now I'm editing this album for 3 hours. And I can listen to an audiobook, I can put on a show while I do it. But that's it. I'm not trying to do anything else. And once those 3 hours are up, no matter how much, time I've spent or how done I am on the project, I am changing the task. It helps a lot when you're doing stuff like podcasting and you're making multiple episodes in a day. You're already in the mindset for it. You already usually are dressed for it. I'm in my PJs, so maybe not today. But I've definitely done batch editing days where I've done, I'll record 4 or 5 podcasts in a day. Or if I do Reels creations, I'll just be editing Reels. I'll spend a whole day doing just blog posts. I think it helps your brain to know, like, I'm not changing tasks every 5 minutes. I'm not getting distracted by other things. I'm just in this one zone. Like today, I spent 3 hours this morning scheduling social media posts for my marketing of my business. And I was just spending that time on finding images, writing captions, scheduling posts. That's it. I'm not going to try to take content in that time. I'm not going to try to, mix my tasks up. I'm not going to answer emails in that time. I'm just doing that task. And that helps a lot. So I recommend that. If you need to try that, I do think it's hard, and I'd love to talk to someone who's working for an employer at the moment. I think when I worked, and I had a job and a boss and a team, I would try to batch work, but really it got honestly frustrating when I would be in the middle of a task and someone goes, hey, could you get my email? Like, could you get that done for me? Thanks. And I remember this distinctly. Like, one of my first days of work, someone came in and said just that. And I was like, yeah, totally. but they didn't give me an expected deadline. They didn't give me, more information on it. And so in my head, I'm like, this didn't say urgent. This didn't say ASAP. And I've already got like 8 other things that I'm working on. So I just kept working on what I was doing. And then like an hour later, the person comes back and goes, hey, like, could you any like update? Could you get me that like now? And I'm like, oh, like right now. Like you wanted me to drop everything else I was doing, even though I was in the zone, even though I have other tasks going on, and prioritize your thing, which is my job. But where does that fall hierarchically? Like hierarchy wise, do I listen to you? Do I listen to my actual direct report? Do I listen to my personal, like my manager on my team? Do I listen to my coworker? But you come in from a different department and ask me, like, I just didn't know. And I had many talks with my boss at the time of like, hey, I was still new. I was like, hey, where does this fall under my responsibilities? Like, who do I listen to? Is it, this person came in as like a different department head? That's awesome. But like, does that have more weight than you? Do I have to run by and ask you for things? Like, I just did not know what the vibes were yet. And it turns out at the company, like, they didn't know what the vibes were either. And it's like, if the president comes in and says something, you do it. If the vice president of a department comes in and says something, you should do it, even if it doesn't fall under your description of your job. And then if your direct boss says something, then like, I don't know, like you should do it, but all those other voices trump it. It was one of those weird things. So anyway, I would love to have that conversation if somebody has like a normal job with a team and employees and works for someone else. Like, I'd love to know how batch working applies in your work and what that is like for you. Okay, next idea, to kind of wake up from the fog, go on a vacation, and if you can't afford it, go on a staycation. Money is tight, eggs are expensive, life is expensive, but I think getting out of your freaking zip code helps so much. It helps you remember what's important in life. It helps you empathize with other people in the world and what they might be going through. It helps you escape just a little, but I think really like root yourself in what you value in life and what's important. I again have another episode where I talk about our European vacation in the fall and just kind of really like how eye-opening that was, again, after a whole very stressful year of working, to be like, oh wow, I am sitting in a French cafe. I am sipping my teeny tiny espresso. I am people watching. And look, that person walking down the street, they have a whole life. They have probably people that love them, people that they love. And you know what? That's amazing. That's beautiful. And my silly little dumb problems start to slowly melt away when I'm like, God loves these people. He created this whole dang globe. We have to think about all of these factors instead of just getting sucked into like my problems and me and blah and like all that stuff. I just think that really helps reset things. Even if all you can do is go on a staycation, go on a staycation. Go in a hotel down the street. Go to the most, close by city that you haven't stayed in a while. Even if it feels familiar to you, go. Just, it's not that expensive, And again, I understand if you can't swing it, then go visit a friend and stay the night. Have a sleepover. Those things really help, I think, reset our nervous systems and remind our brains, like breaking out of those, like, what are they called? Neuro patterns. I don't know. Someone on the internet shared some word about like we make these patterns of every day. You come home, you put your shoes there, you put your coat away, you walk down, you get a snack, you go to the bathroom, you make your dinner, you sit on the couch, you watch Netflix, take a shower, go to bed. Like we make these same choices all the time. And when we do that over and 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 over again, it becomes so a part of us that it can get depressing, it can get monotonous, and it can really make you think like there is no more to life than this. And this is what I do, and I have no variations, and my brain is set this way, my body is set this way. And I think that's just so damaging. There's so much beauty in life. And to be convinced there's nothing else for us and that's all we can do is really heartbreaking. So even if it's visiting a friend and having a sleepover, doing a little staycation, going on a vacation with your loved ones, even by yourself, I really think that's, before therapy even, like that might be the investment to make if you're feeling a little foggy these days. And then the other thing I've been trying to do to help release some of this tension, to hurry and to be distracted, is buffer 20 extra minutes in everything. Sometimes I arrive late. It's part of my DNA. But Ian and I are trying desperately. And he's doing so much better at this than I am. He's like, hey, babe, let's not close our laptop at 5 o'clock if we need to leave by 5:10. Like, that's not a good idea. Let's be done at 4:30. Give yourself time to get ready, get out the door, and leave 10 minutes early. You never know what you're going to run into on the way to some event or something. So those are my little tips. And then some little tips for the ADHDers, or things that I've kind of started to adapting. That started to adapting to malfunction with words question mark. I have been trying to do these things because they are helpful for me, but also people on the internet have agreed that they are helpful. One is keep your shoes on in the house. I've found to be far more productive when I have my shoes on. Anyone else feel that way? I saw someone post about this, and I always thought like it was just one of those, oh, I'm too ADHD. I'm too like dysregulated that I cannot take my shoes off and I just walk in and start doing things. But I saw some thread and all these people like, no, like keeping your shoes on when you are having a hard time staying focused really helps you focus. It tells your body, it's this kind of the same with wearing jeans, I feel like, when you work from home. You're telling your body, I will not get relaxed. I will not sit down on the couch. I'm not done for the day. I have to keep going and doing things because I've got shoes on my feet. And at any moment, if I need to run outside and grab the mail or take out the trash or go for a walk, like I'm ready for it. And it keeps you in that like work mindset. And I'd love to see like some data and some studies on like there's like a psychology of clothing and why you should get dressed. And I fully agree. When you are dressed for success, when you have jeans on, when you have uncomfortable clothes, when you're wearing a bra, ladies, and you're working, it feels different and your brain is more wired to stay focused because it's in work mode. But as soon as you're in sweats, like me today, or as soon as your shoes come off, or as soon as the bra comes off, you are back into relax mode. And it's easier to just be like not as productive, feeling not as urgent about tasks, and feeling way more like this isn't something I need to spend a lot of time or a lot of focus on. Another thing you can try, this is my little phrase that we start saying, is don't put it down, put it away. And I'm trying. But I kid you not, guys, like on any given day, unless we have company, our kitchen is full of me putting things down and not putting them away. Like little glasses here or there, or like cat toy or food. Like I don't know why, but my brain sometimes is just like, no, I just need to get this out of my hand. But it's just too much for me to put it in the dishwasher. It's too much for me to put it in the sink because the sink is full of last week's dishes that I haven't done yet, or that Ian hasn't done yet, because we both struggle with this so badly. Like his office, like he will have like all of the little collections of cups, like ginger ale glass, coffee from yesterday, wine mug, mac and cheese bowl, like all the little things. We just put them to the side, and it's really hard for us to like physically be like, I'm getting up, I am putting it away. Anyway, it's just a struggle. Another thing, don't work in bed. I don't count my podcast as work, so I'm not working in bed, technically. I'm just cozy in bed right now. But truly, like, again, I work from home. I work for myself. I edit photos 90% of every single work day. And it's easy for me to be, like, tempted to just sit in bed and have my laptop there and be editing. I will give myself maybe one day a month, not even that, to, like, do that kind of work. Because I just know, if I'm in bed, I've already kind of lost the fight. If I'm not feeling great, but I have to get something done, maybe this is the vibe. But 9 times out of 10, I don't. I have to sit upright at my desk or at my kitchen table to actually get a number of things done. It just is, you've lost the battle at that point, I feel like. Another thing, kind of a no-brainer, I don't have social media notifications on. Doesn't mean I, don't check my social media, that much. But I absolutely do not have my Instagram notifications on. No email notifications coming to my phone. Nothing on Facebook. I'm not on Snapchat. I'm not on Twitter. None of that. But I just think that is the most, your brain is like, what? It's so bad. And there's studies. I mean, we right now as an adult species it's reported we have the attention span that's 5 seconds before you lose our attention. And that is shorter than the attention span of a goldfish. A goldfish has a longer attention span at 7 seconds than an adult human person, at least in America these days. I hate to be that person who's like, smartphones are ruining us all. But I genuinely agree with a lot of the data that's like, if smartphones had not been invented, would we have longer attention spans? I wholeheartedly agree. If TikTok wasn't a thing, if Snapchat wasn't a thing, and I grew up right in that generation of, growing up with technology. I remember distinctly one of our neighbors, who was a younger girl than me, getting her first Apple, I think it was an iPod Touch, and we were all crowded around it, standing in the middle of the road. Like, we're like, whoa, you can move your finger and it like moves with you. You know what I mean? And we were so innocent back then, but now I don't even think about the fact that I'm not hitting real buttons. I'm tapping on a glass screen, and yet I can create words and images and tell stories and book clients and run a business from just tapping on a glass screen in my hand. It's very wild. It's very wild. But I think we're just at this interesting crossroads with things like this, technology, with advertisements, and with the pressures of the world. And if you read The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, you'll kind of understand this is some of that information I gathered more clearly from that book. But it's not just that this stuff has kind of increased our productivity and decreased our attention spans, but because this now exists, employers and the expectations of society have now gone, oh, well, this exists. So even if it would have taken you someone who's not participating in social media, maybe 10 years ago, they were like, hey, here's a task for the week. You can do this task all week. We'll give you 5 days. And now, even if you're like, I don't partake in social media, I don't partake in these things, now that same task is being asked to be done in like 3 hours, because they're like, we know the technology exists to get it done quicker and to boost your productivity. So you either have to hop on and use these new tools to do it faster for us and then hurt yourself and dysregulate your own system, or you're like not able to do the job anymore. And it's like, well, why aren't you being able to adapt to new technology? And I just think as a culture, like, some of it's, our own neurological capacities, but I do think some of it is the pressure of the world to say, well, if you can do it faster, then let's do it faster. There's this whole idea with the Amazon stuff going on of like, when Amazon introduced 2-day shipping, I think that shot a bullet through the heart of small businesses and every other industry, right? It's a beautiful thing in some circumstances that you're like, wow, like I can get whatever I need to my doorstep within 2 days. That's pretty remarkable, especially for people who live really far out in the middle of nowhere, who might never have the access to a lot of these goods, for people who, don't want to run out in public these days because it gets really hard to like fit that into a busy life when you're like a mom and you've got all these things going on. It's super convenient. It's a very small window and it's an affordable price. Amazon Prime is not that expensive. But that expectation of 2-day shipping put to every other business, hey, now you can't do what we have now done because you're smaller, because there's less funding, and because you don't ship through us and you're not one of our providers. So you're going to lose business because all the clients or all the customers are now disappointed that they have to wait a normal amount of time, 7 to 10 days, to receive a good. And it now makes everyone else either feel like we have to rise to the occasion and work faster, and that means things will be missed. That means that we're not giving a quality product that we normally do because we're not meeting the demands of the customer. We're now meeting the demands of Amazon and trying to fight against this big giant. And in the meantime, they're losing a lot of clients and thus money, and a lot of small businesses have to close their doors or just face the wrath of consumers that are like, I could have got this faster on Amazon. Even if the quality is good and it used to be an amazing thing, now it's being pegged as like, you were too slow. I digress. All that to say, if you struggle with those things, I hope my little tips are somewhat helpful for you today. And I'd love to hear ADHD hacks if you've got them. I know there's so many other people who have actually been diagnosed and are, using medication or other things to kind of help regulate things for them. If you got advice, leave it in the comments. If you have advice for me, the other thing I'm struggling with is like working out sounds so unappealing at all times. I never like have the desire to, and I'm really struggling with like any kind of routine. So if you've got ideas on how do you plug in that for the ADHD mind, and if I'm just being honest, like here's my thought process with it. I have curly hair and my hair gets really greasy after I work out. I don't want to have to wash my hair, and I don't even have the time to wash my hair. It takes like a full like 40 minutes of a shower to wash, condition, and do my curl treatment with my long curly hair. And then I have to dry it a certain way. And so I don't want to do all that. It would take like literally 2 hours when I have like a wash day. My curly hair girls know it takes like at least 2 hours. So if I have to working out in the morning doesn't quite make sense because then I get sweaty. Then I have to take a shower. And if I can get away with my hair that day, that's great. But then if I have like a call or a commercial or a wedding, then I have to like do my makeup and figure out how to do that with the hair. I don't know. It just like seems to be like a whole process, but I know women have figured this out, and I there's an element of me just being lazy, but then there's an element of me being like I'm struggling to find where this fits in, knowing that I don't have the time to commit to a 45-minute workout, a 45-minute shower, and then like dry my hair and look decent for the next day. I don't know. It's like a whole thing. But anyway, I've been yapping for a while. I wanted to bring up one quick thing. I cannot talk today. Before this episode ends. In one of my last episodes, I kind of complained about the state of the world. And you know what? I'm not retracting it. I still think the world is getting really scary. Specifically, America is getting scary. I'm scared. As an American, I've got some fear. I'm trying to give that to the Lord. It still is there. And I don't want to be someone that just, complains without putting action behind it. So I have a piece of action for us today. One of the things I mentioned that I'm really frustrated by is the funding getting cut from USAID. As a Christian, as a faith person, that's deeply troubling to have America go back on its word to marginalize people who are very, struggling with various things. Some of them are in disease-ridden countries, and America has promised them funding, and for us to go back on our funding and to go back on our promise feels uniquely frustrating in this time. Unsurprising as a whole, but also deeply troubling as a Christian and someone of faith. So here's something you can do. World Relief is a Christian nonprofit organization who is usually the bridge between a lot of these things. Catholics and Christians have supported them for a very long time, and they go into some of these impoverished countries that America, since the 60s, has created bonds with and said, we think it's best in our political interest and as a humanitarian country to say we will help you out with meal packs, with food, with AIDS medication, with HIV medication, and provide that for you. And that's part of what the money of USAID has gone to, is to partner with World Relief, and then World Relief goes and carries all that out. When Trump came into office and Elon and the stupid Doge stuff, sorry, that's my opinion, in his efforts to save American tax dollars, I think I spelled this out, he slashed the funding for World Relief and USAID. And so World Relief is now like, we as Christians and as faith-filled nonprofit members are committing to uphold our promises to these people, and we want to do our best. So they are now trying to privately fund the missing half that America said, hey, we're going to give you all this money so that we can help our allies. And now the president has gone back on his word. So if you're interested in helping in this area, World Relief funds are being collected through worldrelief.org. It's a trustworthy organization. We're going to donate to it as well. If I ever make any money on this podcast, it's going to go to them. And I think it's a way that we can go, okay, we don't have to be paralyzed by fear, but we can actually put some money where our mouth is and step up and do some things. There's another big issue on my heart today. It is the national forests that Trump over the weekend has decided to make an executive order and let thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of acres be cut down because of the new tariffs on Canada, where we have gotten most of our lumber from Canada. Now that's going to be tariffed at an extremely high 25 to 30%. So all that lumber is going to be sourced here in America. We do not have the forest infrastructure for that. And these have traditionally been protected lands. Our national forests have been sacred spaces to help our biodiversity as a country. And now that this new executive order has come in, it is, if it gets passed, going to be really detrimental to our biodiversity here in the States. And it's really sad. It's really sad. And I'm really pissed, honestly, at some of these things. So I'm going to try to find a solution there. I think we have to wait to see if it gets passed. If there's any petitions or any protests or any things we can do to call our Congress people, I will let you guys know. I haven't seen any resources just yet, but that's a legitimate concern. And it should be a concern for all Americans to watch our sacred lands and the spaces that have been protected for our human flourishing and are literally God's handiwork to be slashed and privatized and commercialized is really disheartening. So before I cry on camera, I'm going to end. Thank you guys for listening and watching. I hope you guys stay less distracted and more in tune with your bodies and lives this week. Love you guys. Okay, bye.